Everyone has moments in life they can't just stop thinking about. They can be embarrassing things, like that one time you face planted in front of a group of teenagers, or something amazing like the first time you hosted your family for the holidays. And on Baby, This is Keke Palmer, hosted by me, Keke Palmer, and presented by BMW, we know to savor the good memories and let go of the bad. And one thing everyone remembers fondly is their first time behind the wheel of a BMW. So come join me and BMW this summer as we explore pop culture moments and topics you just can't stop thinking about on Baby, This is Keke Palmer, sponsored by BMW, the ultimate driving machine.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room? It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th.
We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
In each episode, our special guest or guests bring with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
This week we have the largest recording in Scarred for Life history. Our guests are the Adams family, which includes Zelda and Lulu Adams, as well as their parents, Toby Poser and John Adams. They are a family of filmmakers who write, act, shoot, produce, direct, edit, and score their films. Just a couple things. Their latest film is the witchy Hellbender, which just released on Shudder. Welcome to the show, guys!
Hello!
Thanks for having us.
We're really excited to chat with you, and I think this is going to be a wild recording. Again, we're mostly one-on-one or two-on-one, so this is going to be exciting, and I cannot wait. But I do want to know, what the thing that we typically do is we bring it back to the beginning. So I don't know how you all want to address this as a family, but how did you all get introduced to horror?
Well, I loved, when I was a kid, I think I loved Basket Case, which I had to then rewatch later because I wasn't that young. I mean, that was what, like 84?
I think it was early 80s for sure.
Yeah, but like seedy New York and stuff, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh my God, this is like making me uncomfortable, sexy, but it's also just so gritty and cool. And I wanted to move to New York, and I eventually did after I saw that film. So yeah, Basket Case was maybe my first realization that, oh my God, this twisted shit is fun.
Yeah, for me, the thing that I got introduced to horror by my soccer coach, who brought me to see Phantasm, and I didn't sleep for a year. The tall man never left my bed, my mirror, or my window. The tall man was there he's still there. And so since I got so scarred, when we had kids, I couldn't wait to scar them.
Yeah. We practically grew up on horror movies, Lulu and I. And, it was like second nature to watch horror movies. Like watching PG and G-rated movies, like that was a foreign thing to us. And so when I was, I think, how old? 11, 12, let me think.
The Hatred?
Yeah, so
probably like 10.
I was like 10, 11. I am really bad with years, but we had just finished our fourth drama, and Toby was working on a really great script. And, John, Lulu, and I were kind of like, all right, twiddling our thumbs, like, what do we do now? And I was like, hey, I would love to just be a kick-ass woman and just, like, kill a bunch of dudes. And John
Hell
was
yeah.
like, wow, all right, let's write a story about that.
I got some idiot friends we can kill.
So yeah, a lot of his old punk rock mates acted in our film The Hatred, and that was like when we made our first hour-long horror movie.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's so cool. But so, okay, Lulu, this is for Lulu and Zelda first, but what kind of films did you watch as kids growing up? Like, what were some of the ones you remember watching, and maybe one of the first ones you remember watching?
Kind of half in response to also to your first question, one of the first horrors that I was intrigued by seeing all the ads just on my parents' television and stuff was for Saw. And I decided, sneaky little me, was going to watch Saw, but I thought I was a genius and I was going to watch it in Russian. I thought it would make it funny. I was like, I'll just laugh at it, if it's Russian.
That's incredible. That is an incredible loophole.
But you know what? It did not work out. Eventually, I had no idea what was coming on. No verbal cues of anything. Oh yeah, I'll go first, or you go. You jump in the pool of needles.
Is that why you're terrified of needles?
Probably.
And Russians.
I swear. This was also during our road trip where we filmed our first movie, Rumble Strips, and we happened to pass a lot of white speed limit signs in the distance that looked just like Saw's face by chance.
Oh my God.
That's that was one of my first chances with that, but it stuck with me. Honestly, also the idea of building up terror and something very human. There's no sense of magic in that series in the way of these are true humans, committing crimes, some that can be very human, and you're being punished for them. You're caught. That same feeling of just being a kid with your hand in the cookie jar getting caught. And that was a very real fear.
Except the cookie jar is filled with like spikes or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Like razor blades.
Yeah, chocolate chip cookie, a little hint of razor blade. Check out the salt.
Mine isn't as realistic as yours, and people are normally surprised when I tell them like the first movie that really terrified me but got me into horror. It was Coraline. I watched Coraline.
Oh, hell yeah. That is incredible. Yeah.
That was supposed to be a kid's movie, but it scarred me. Like, it was so invasive, and it had me questioning, like, are my parents my real parents? Oh my God, like, am I Coraline? Are they going to sew buttons into my eyes? So, yeah.
Why don't I have curls like they do?
Yeah, we talked about that on the podcast before. Like, someone brought that. It scarred them for life. And that movie also freaked me out when I saw it. Like, it is not fun. It is not a kid's movie.
Okay, so my mind just I'm just still thinking about button eyes. I'm stuck.
Argue too.
And Russians.
Right, and Russians, scary Russians that I can't understand, and they're putting my hands in cookie jars. It's a whole thing over here. Okay, so for Toby and John, what draws you to the genre now that you're adults and you've been working in it and you've experienced so many different movies over the last few decades?
That the horror community is so wonderful, and that when you make horror, you're allowed so much more artistic freedom. They don't care. The horror community, the horror press, they don't care whether you have a star. They don't care about production value. They care if you put your heart into it. And that's a beautiful thing. And so, basically, as artists, making horror is just a wonderful experience.
Yeah, and it's also, I think that we're like a really kind of fun, loving family, and I think we're pretty damn happy. But somehow it's just felt so natural to move into horror when you feel kind of happy. It's almost like the happier we are, the more excited we are to make horror. It's a strange kind of paradox.
That's so cool. I've never thought about it like that. That's cool.
Well, like if you think about some of the best villains are the nicest looking people, and some of the funniest people are probably really, really sad in real life. And so, yeah, I think that our happiness helps us kind of delve into the darkness because we love playing with those extremes.
Yeah, I love that.
Cool.
Now that you guys have been making movies together and you've been making horror films, and it sounds like Lulu and Zelda, you've kind of been raised on horror films. Do horror films scare you now?
It's really interesting. I've been talking to John and Toby, I haven't had a horror movie scare me in a really long time. And it makes us talk about, well, what about a horror film really makes you scared? I think the last time I felt like I don't know if it was scared or just like off or uneasy, but I was watching Hereditary, and there's like a part where there's like a figure in the background, and it's really, really dark, and it's like, can I see that or not? Am I supposed to be seeing that? And that was like the last time I felt uneasy. How about you, Lou?
For me, it's a lot more realistic things now. In the past, it used to be, scary monsters that are unbeatable that just bothered me. I was like, well, how are you supposed to beat them? And you can chop off their arms and it doesn't do nothing to them. But now it's a lot more realistic, such as, I think Toby feels the same, but about zombie movies and certain diseases, or kind of psychological disorders, like things that feel way more close to home and almost relatable.
Yeah, I haven't been scared. I mean, yeah, obviously I love when a loud cymbal bangs in the theater and I get a jump scare. Right. That's fun. That's one kind of scare. But I haven't been psychologically scared like the way I was as a kid. But I find horror movies a lot more fun now because they're metaphors for actual things that are scary. So the psychological terror is something that I really like. And I like the black humor, the dark humor of horror movies. So those two things are now what thrill me. It's like when I see something just gruesome, I have to giggle because it's like, oh my God, it's so fucking dark.
I love moments like that.
So yeah, but I don't go to bed at night and be like, oh my God, I hope Saw Guy doesn't come after me.
Just the Phantasm, just the tall man from Phantasm.
The tall man he can still creep around. He's still creeping around. And that fucking metal ball.
The Swiss Army knives of metal balls.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Oh my God, you're so right. It's just a Swiss Army knife. Now I'm not scared anymore. You ruined it.
Darn it.
What the hell? I never even thought about that. That is so great.
But Toby, what about you? Like, has a movie scared you? What was the last movie that scared you?
Oh, well, it's funny because I can't wait to talk about the movie we're going to talk about. I won't mention it because rewatching it, I was pretty fucking terrified, and I'll go into that later about why. But I will say the biggest jump scare I've had, and actually got to see this in a movie theater. We were at Telluride Horror Show this past fall. Amazing festival, wonderful people and films. And we were in the big theater watching Antlers. And it's so dark. And in the beginning, I had that I literally jumped out of my seat. And I think Zelda was sitting next to me. And I was just like, I must have raised out of my seat 2 feet. And that was really fun. It was so much fun to get scared like that again.
It was like the classic popcorn thrown up in the air.
Yeah.
I think that it was the sound. The sound was just so crisp and so loud and jarring. You have to react. If you don't, you're a sociopath, I think.
And being in a theater again was really cool.
Yeah. I was going to say, that movie must have been so good in a theater. I watched it on my TV, and it was great, but on a theater, that must have been, with the sound design especially.
Horror ASMR.
Isn't Telluride gorgeous, though?
Yes.
It's our favorite place ever. We want to go every year.
And the festival there, Telluride Horror Show.
Oh, it's wonderful.
If anybody out there loves festivals, it is a wonderful festival with super wonderful people and great movies.
Yeah, that was my first festival I ever went to. Was in 2018 with Telluride, and it was so fantastic. What a great experience.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's interesting, though, that I think it was, we can't see you, but I think it was Zelda that you said this about Hereditary. Was that you?
Yeah.
That movie comes up a whole lot on the podcast as one that terrified people even to this day. And it is that moment in the theater, especially I don't know if you guys saw it in the theater or not.
Yeah.
But hearing the gasps around the theater as people saw that form in the background was just, that's what movie going is all about.
Absolutely. It's all about the things that you just don't commonly see. I don't really see that happen a lot in horror movies. It's kind of the same with Midsommar. I've never seen a horror movie that's shot in all brightness. And the cliff scene, I won't spoil what happens, but just the sound of it was so dull actually that it felt real. It wasn't like a Hollywood crash. It was like a thump. And I was like, wait, that actually sounded real. I'm a little scared.
It was horrific.
Yeah.
Yeah, the sound design in that is just on another level.
And like, just even speaking of Hereditary, what's fun is when you watch movies that introduce something that you've seen over and over again in a new way. So what was fun for me about Hereditary was after the girl gets her head knocked off, the kid sits in the car.
Yeah.
And he just sits in the car. And it's like, I imagine that all of us sat in our seats knowing that we would probably sit in the car just like him. And it was really excellent. And that's a new way. Instead of being like, like the classic reactions that we're all used to, suddenly it was a brand new reaction to something horrific. And it was so well done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really was.
That scene makes me nauseous just thinking about it. Sorry. It's just like, ooh.
Yeah, but it kind of makes me laugh because it's like, it's just so funny when they refer back to the head and the ants, and I'm like, yeah. So it's just,
when she makes like the diorama of it, and her husband is like, what is wrong with you? So,
I mean, everyone's laughing when they're filming that. You have to laugh. You have to be on set laughing, like quiet on set. But dude, there's ants in a head. It's funny.
It really is, actually. That moment in the movie theater, I was snickering. Everyone else around me was like giving me looks. But I'm like, this is funny.
Next to this guy.
Okay, so let's transition a little bit to the filmmaking side. I'm curious about how all of you got involved, going back from with Toby and John, and then getting your kids involved. How did this all kind of come about?
So we were living in Los Angeles in 2000. We moved to Los Angeles in 2008, and John was doing this cool kind of rock and roll reality show. So he was around a lot of sets and thought it was cool. And my acting jobs had really like tanked at that point, and I was a little frustrated. And we just said, you know what? Let's just make our own fucking movie. We can write, we can get a camera. The kids are interested. So we bought an old RV. We called it Harvey the RV. And we took off for a year in Harvey and made our first film, Rumble Strips. And we were just kind of hooked. And Zelda was 6 and Lulu was 11. And then we've made like 7 features since then. And it's just been such a wonderful evolution that we can do together. And it just gets better and better for us.
Hell yeah.
That's so cool. Like when I first saw The Deeper You Dig, I was so excited that it was like a family thing, and I was so fascinated. And it's like you guys just work together so well, and so it looks like you work together well, like in the movie. But so is it hard working all together as a family, as the only people working on the project?
I found that it's like way easier because first of all, like as a family, we're all really close when we're not filming, but like so much of our filming life and like our family life is intertwined. So it's really beautiful in that way. Like we just know each other so well. It's kind of like growing up with a sports team. You just know each other like the back of your hand. And like we've all started at the same time too. So I like to think that like we're all equals since we've grown the same way, evolutionized the same way together.
Wow.
Cheers.
That's cool.
That was really, that's it. That's all we have to talk about. That is it.
So that brings us to Hellbender, and it comes out on Shudder on Thursday. So can you tell our listeners a little bit about the film and what they can expect?
Absolutely. It's about these creatures called Hellbenders. And it's a mother and a daughter. And it's how they both navigate through their relationship and through what they're destined to be. And it's really fun because they're not humans. They're one notch above humans. And for me, the funnest part of the movie is when you look at a Hellbender, you have to ask yourself whether it's noble to be a good Hellbender or whether you shouldn't be a good Hellbender. And that's what I find, as one of the members that made this movie, the funnest part of the movie is like, who gets to sit in the seat of judgment and why? Like when we watch a wolf kill a rabbit, is that a bad wolf? Do we go bad wolf? Or do we go like, wow, that's an ass kicking wolf. And that was a slow rabbit. So that's what Hellbender is about to me. What do you think, anybody?
And they're in a kick-ass rock band.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
yeah.
Those are the best parts. I was like, this is a musical? Like, or a musical?
I'm so glad you say that, because when we set out on this, I kept saying very quietly, I was like, I want to make a musical. But I hate musicals. So we're not going to make a musical, but I'm going to make a musical.
I mean, like this, you could just call this a musical. You have great like music and musical interludes, and everyone has badass outfits and stage makeup on. Like, it's perfect.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah.
I like to think of it as like a compilation of really cool music videos, because before this movie, we had actually made several music videos because we've been a band for like 10 years. And we were like, you know what? We really, really have to integrate this band playing into our next movie. So much of it shares the aspects of those music videos and the music that we make together.
Okay, I didn't realize you guys have been performing as a band for 10 years. That's wild.
Yeah. It's been great. And we've like changed a lot. We've evolved as a band as the kids grew up, and they like, obviously, like I pushed Black Flag on them. So we sound like Black Flag when we started. But, you know, as we grew, they started pushing back and introducing their music, and it was like really cool. So I got to evolve too as we wrote music together, and it's been a fun process. And now I think like our music really has a singular sound. Like I think we pulled from a lot of different sources, and as Hellbender came to fruition, I think we were really starting to, what did you say, congeal? Is that the right word? We were really starting to solidify our sound, right?
Right.
And, you know, now we really have kind of a singular sound that's super fun. It's kind of like all of our influences packed into the burger. It's a vegan burger, but
What is your band's name?
It's called Hellbender, but all of the E's are 6s. So it's like,
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
Hell Satan.
We're actually going to have the soundtrack's going to be released too, a little bit after Shudder release. We're going to have like vinyl and digital, and there are 20 songs on it. And most of them are in the film, but some of them aren't.
Yeah, some of the songs that hit the floor for the movie. Like we wanted a lot of songs, but we wrote a lot of songs together for the movie. But obviously, you can't just put in 20-something songs. So the ones that hit the floor are also on the album. So it's gonna be fun.
Oh, that's so cool.
Wow. I'm gonna have to get that on vinyl.
I'm curious about the transition from The Deeper You Dig to Hellbender, because it kind of looks like it's like a little bit like effects a little bit more, and like a little bit I don't know. It seems like you guys have kind of upped production value a little bit between the two, because I feel like there was a lot of really awesome reaction about The Deeper You Dig when it first came out, and I was curious what it was like to go from that movie to this one.
Oh, thank you. Well, first of all, storyline wise, we really wanted to grow. Like the great thing about the festival circuit, and after you've released your movie like The Deeper You Dig, you do get a lot of reviews and critics saying, oh, I love this part, I didn't like this part as much. And some people were saying, oh, like I really wish I saw the mother and daughter story a little bit more, so that I could really like care about them and like know more about them. So we sought out to do that in Hellbender. We really, really wanted to evolve the storyline between the mother and daughter and make them both complex individuals, so that the audience just doesn't know who's right or wrong. You know, anyone can side with whoever. And technologically, we all love like really cool camera equipment. I love camera equipment. So we bought a micro lens, a Ronin, which acts as a really great steady cam to add more movement into the movie, which I love. I love movement. A lot of The Deeper You Dig was kind of static. It was shot on a tripod. We also got a 4K camera and a drone.
Wow.
I was wondering about the drone because there's definitely some like overhead high shots, and I was like, this has to be a drone. It looks so crisp and beautiful.
Yeah, Zelda crashed it on day one.
Get it out of the way early, I guess.
This was like all fear left after day one because Zelda crashed it into the side of a cliff, and I had to reach down and pull it off of a pine tree that it wedged the propellers. Zelda's like, Dad!
When I tell you it was like a miracle, I don't normally believe in miracles, but we were shooting on the side of the cliff. We might have even used the shot in the movie.
We did,
and I was acting in it while controlling the drone too. Like, we got the shot. I was feeling really confident. I was like, all right, let's bring the drone back. And I nailed it right into a tree. And it fell into this crevice between a tree and the cliff. And luckily, it was arm's length away for John to grab it. Otherwise, it would have been gonzo.
I'm only missing 2 fingers.
The price to pay for
it. Price to pay for art.
So I also have to ask, this was filmed in quarantine, correct? This was filmed during COVID, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
How was that for you? Because I mean, you guys, it mostly is just your family. So I was curious, did that even affect how you guys shot?
I think in the beginning when we started shooting, it was John, Toby, and Zelda on the East Coast, and I'd been living and teaching in Oregon. I just graduated and I was a teacher there for a bit. And so they drove up in this trailer to the Pacific Northwest and met with me to film over there and film all along that coastline.
Oh, wow.
For some of those scenic shots. Yeah. But we were being super COVID conscious. And so I wasn't going into contact with my parents actually. So I would drive on my weekends, I would drive my car and camp outside their trailer, and we'd all shoot at a distance or press start playing, and you'd run away and hold your breath and be quiet. Or, hey, Lulu, hit the start play for us and put yourself back exactly where you were because we put focus on you.
Yeah, the scene where I'd pull the chair away from her was me actually just being COVID conscious. I was like, there is no way I'm sitting near this lady, bro.
I love that.
So
that's incredible.
Really fun and creative, but it made you work hard for the shots that you want. And it did provide a bit of awkwardness between characters that were awkward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's funny because when I first saw the films, I saw it out of Fantasia. I didn't even clock that there was some distances between people. And then when I was watching it this time and I had done a little bit of research, it's like, oh, and I started to notice it, but I hadn't even noticed it until that moment.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the scene in the prologue with the women hanging the grandmother Hellbender, we shot a day before lockdown began.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we were only just reading about kind of COVID. It was kind of like, it was like, we had a different story, actually. And we had that scheduled, so we were shooting that, and the headlines started coming in, and we realized, we were like, you know what's going to happen? The world's going to shut down. And the day after we shot that, the world started shutting down, and it was really intense. So we changed our script very quickly because we were like, well, we're not going to just sit and do nothing for a year. So we just looked at what the story was, what the point of the story was, and stripped it to its bare essentials. And in fact, I think it was quite lucky for us because I think what we got was probably better than what we were hoping for. Because we love the stripped down bare story. It's really fun.
Cool.
Yeah, and I think that doing that kind of puts the focus more on Zelda's character and Toby, your character. Like it really hones in on that interaction. And I think that's what really drives this movie and makes it incredibly successful.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we've talked about your careers and your horror beginnings, but Addams Family, what movie are we talking about today?
The Descent.
Okay, before we jump in, I'm going to read a quick synopsis for people who aren't familiar. A caving expedition goes horribly wrong as the explorers become trapped and ultimately pursued by a strange breed of predators. Dun, dun,
and I'm actually glad that I had never seen that synopsis before I had watched the movie originally, because I think synopsis sometimes spoil everything. But anyway, before we get to that, let's take it back. Why is this the Scarred for Life movie? I'm assuming, is it for you, Zelda? Is this your movie?
Yeah, I actually watched this pretty late in my life. I'm not going to lie. I think I was maybe actually like 13, 14. And it was always sitting in we have like a booklet of discs. And I kept seeing the cover that has like skulls on it. And I was like, I can't tell if this movie is going to be like a huge cheese fest or if it's actually going to be good. So I watch it with you, John, first.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, John, do you want to watch this movie with me? And he said, yeah. So we watched it, and that was the first time in years that I had the hugest jump scare of my entire life. So many movies failed to like hide the monster, and this one did not shy away. And I tell you, I think I shat my pants every time. No way I just saw that on screen. But...
You said it was the dog. What's
Wait a second.
The dog shat my pants.
Wait, which jump scare was it that got you so badly?
Oh, actually, there's a first one where it's a false jump scare, and it's just a girl that shows up behind her maybe halfway through the movie, and they have a huge, like, bomb. And I'm like,
yeah.
Oh my god. And then I'm like, wait, it's just nothing. It's her friend.
No, but I remember you were scared to death when they finally reveal the white humanoid. Like, there's a great first reveal. There's lots of hints of the humanoid. Like, we see the mouth dripping and we see movements and stuff. But there's a final. Is it when it's in the infrared?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, where she just, and then it's just like, and I remember Zelda just being like, "What the fuck was that?" And it's really great because it reveals and then it creeps off. Whoever the actors are, the physical actors. Let's hire them for everything.
Phenomenal.
Yeah. They're just wonderful.
So skeletal and creepy, and also watching the movie, it was so, I think this is the word, like, monotonous. Like, it was so much, like, red and just claustrophobia the entire time. It kind of felt like I was seeing the same shot over and over again, which I loved because it did make me feel claustrophobic. And then to have that, like, spark, that jump right there, like, totally, like, I was not expecting it, and it changed my entire vision. It was so great.
But also that first, like, when the first, like, what, 2 minutes with in the car.
Oh no.
It's just so like shocking.
Oh my
god.
This movie makes me jump every time I watch it. Like, I've seen this movie so many times. I know where all the jump scares are, and yet I still jump. And I think that is a testament to how scary this movie is and how good it is.
Yep, it is relentless.
The moment that made me jump this time, and I, again, like Mary Beth, I've watched this movie so many different times, but I was watching it last night. I still was unprepared. There's a fake out scene where it's in the cabin and Sarah is asleep and she gets up and she's walking by the window and she hears Jessica laughing and then the spear goes through and it's a dream.
Yes,
but like I fucking jumped and went, I actually screamed. And I've seen this movie so many times, but that moment, it's so disarming in the way that it can get you.
Eek!
Yeah.
Seriously.
You know what Toby and I were noticing when we rewatched it was how entertaining it is. They never stop. They start the movie out with a great kill and then they continue them. Like, they never give you much of a span to relax. They're always giving you something gory, something terrifying, something awful. And that's really well done and really well spaced. And it's never cheap. Like, even like a jump scare like that, it was just so well executed that it's like, cool, I buy it. It's good. Like, those copper tubes going right through the window and into her skull was like, okay, oh my God, that was terrifying. And just relentless with the entertainment, the horror entertainment value.
Yeah.
100%. And like, I know that Terry and I were talking, like, in our notes, talking about, like, you said that it's like paced really well. Like, the storytelling, like, starts and doesn't stop. And it's like very consolidated in how it tells the story, but it does it very efficiently and quickly. Like, with setting up the friendships, with setting up the stakes. And I just, it's like incredibly precise in how it sets up everything so you care enough about the people without spending too much time with the people.
Absolutely. And I think it's actually really interesting too, because I was watching it with Lulu and I was like, we're 60 or 70 minutes in and they haven't, oh no, not 70, like 60 minutes in and they hadn't showed the monster yet. I was like, I thought that they showed it way earlier. But it's so great because they fill in like the first 60 minutes with that first kill and like all these other gut-wrenching injuries and claustrophobic events, like when the rope slices her hand open.
What a badass character though. She's just like free climbing along the ceiling, just putting those, I think they're called climbing cams in, just like one hand at a time. I'm like, first of all, there is no way you're ever going to get me in a cave. I don't understand people who want to go spelunking, but like,
absolutely fucking not.
I was like, God, who does this? Stop.
I mean, my idea of camping is going to the Motel 6. So like, I just
camping.
None of this is ever going to happen for me. So it's like not a fear that I ever have, because if I end up in a cave, something has gone dreadfully wrong.
Yeah, I think the almost worse than like, or equally horrific as the jump scares is the claustrophobia. That scene in the tunnel where she gets stuck. And then the rocks start to shift. It made me so fucking uncomfortable. I was just like, oh my God, I need like a Quaalude after I watch this.
Like, I did not know I was claustrophobic until I watched this movie, actually. Like, I never thought about it, and then I found the words for what I was feeling, and it was claustrophobia, and ever since then, I have just hated those small spaces.
Well, and that scene is perfectly, like, structured, where, you know, the actress that plays Sarah is so phenomenal in that scene of, like, trying to hold it together, the kind of escalating panic of being stuck in that place, and not realizing, you know, in her mind, I could see play out like, oh gosh, I'm stuck here. I'm not gonna be able to leave. I'm gonna die down here. I can't get out. And Beth comes back and is talking her through it, you know, gets calmed down. And it's sort of like, it's executed like a good jump scare where, you know, there's that tension and then it releases the tension and it jerks it back up. Cause the moment that whole thing rumbles, it's like, oh fuck, they're both going to die now. Like it's such an excellently crafted tension building scene.
Also, to that point, which is really great of the filmmakers, is every single of those women are terrific athletes.
Yep.
So like, and they establish that very early on where you're like, okay, they may be actresses, but they look like athletes first. So you just buy in. You're like, cool. Like the scene where she's running down the hospital hallway when she wakes up from losing her family, to me, beyond the fact that it's wonderfully shot with the lighting and everything, it's just this wonderful running shot. I was like, that girl, put a soccer ball in front of that girl and she's going to score a hat trick in no time.
Yep.
I mean, she is such a wonderful athlete. And then suddenly you're with all these other great athletes. They establish them as great athletes and powerful women, whitewater rafting. So it's like, that's such smart storytelling, because you are buying this, and when they're walking into that cave, like I'm bought in. Like the fact that these ladies are going to drop down into this hole. If it was cheesy kind of flat characters, I'd be like, oh brother, this is going to be so dumb. But I'm like, wow, I want to see what these badasses do down there, and they kick some ass even once they're down there, you know.
Well, and so I love this movie because it has an incredible representation of female friendships, and specifically like friend groups full of women. As a woman who has had a group of female friends, like, and this was written by a man, which is shocking. I will just say it, like that Neil Marshall wrote this really incredible, like complex group of women who all have their own distinct personalities that are established very quickly. And you get to know them really quickly, and then how they know each other. And I just think the intricacies of that are incredible, because you don't get a lot of that in horror. You get like a lot of really, you know, shallow high school friendships. You know, you'll have cool relationships between like two women, but having this whole group and dynamic make everything even more complex and kind of stakes are even higher. I just love that about this movie. And I've loved that even more as I've watched, like as a kid. I didn't clock that. Like I had no clue. I liked monsters and the claustrophobia, but as I watch it, I get more of an appreciation about the kind of matriarchal system that they have going on in this movie as they descend into the cave.
Absolutely. It kind of had me like, oh, I want to be a part of this friend group. Just like scratch the second half of the movie, please.
Forget all like the cheating and stuff, but like you guys seem cool for the most part.
Also, something that's really cool is they never like indicate that, oh, we're a bunch of badass women. They're just fucking badasses. They never go out of the way and say, well, we're women doing this. They're just like women doing it. And they're cool. And it's not like, oh, these are special women. It's like, no, they're just women who are kick ass. And there's no like explanation of that or excuse for it, you know? I mean, I think the closest you come is when one of them says, hey, I'm a school teacher, like, what am I doing down here? But she's still like a school teacher who can, like, do the most insane things to survive.
That's actually my favorite line in this movie on a rewatch, because she's like, I'm an English teacher, not fucking Tomb Raider, when they're looking down to that tomb, right? And what's funny is that event like in 2013, when they did the video game reboot of Tomb Raider, they pulled a lot from this movie. There's the climbing axes, there's the piles of bodies, there's a pool of blood that Lara Croft ends up being submerged in. And it's like this, the first reboot of the Terminator is sort of like a descent woman kind of going into like a person that starts out being like a regular woman, have to face the most adversity and like violence and death and monsters imaginable. And so I think it's funny that this line is in here, and then like 8 years later, there's a video game that is cribbing from this movie completely.
That's so cool. I had no idea about that. I love that.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
For me, rewatching it, the first time I watched it, I really didn't like Juno. I was like, God, she's such a kind of jerk,
Mm-hmm.
But this time, I loved her the most. And I think that that's great storytelling. And that's something that we would like to do. That's something that we love, is like where, she's the anti-hero, but in fact, she's insanely heroic. She's got a great value system. She does take responsibility for her fuck ups, and she's a total badass, which are all qualities that we all like. And I love that this movie makes the kind of bad girl, if you sit and think about it, you watch the movie enough, you're kind of like, you know what? She's kind of the hero. Even in the end, when she thinks she might get executed by Sarah, she takes it. And Sarah delivers her a very terrible thing. She doesn't deliver her an execution where she's free from her guilt that probably this whole movie is built around her trying to get rid of. She takes the punishment of the worst punishment of all, which is being left there unable to leave.
Suffering.
And she takes it great. So great storytelling.
I'm glad that you said that, John, because Mary Beth and I were having an offline conversation before when she was rewatching this movie, and I actually had the same reaction to Juno this time. When I first saw this movie, I was like, you're a horrible person. But I was watching this now and I'm like, no, she's actually like, it was a mistake. The relationship was probably a mistake. As you said, this whole thing is based on the idea of guilt for her, because her thing, even when all the other women are ready to just hightail it and run in all different directions, she says, no, I am not leaving Sarah behind.
Yeah. Yes.
And so you have that aspect of it. And then she didn't mean to kill Beth. I mean, it was horrible. And that was one of the jump scares that, like, still every time I see it, it always gets me, because it's so, you have like women jumping up and scaring them. And that's been like a jump scare, as you mentioned, Zelda, a couple times in this movie earlier on. And this is a time where it's a jump scare where she turns around and she thinks she's going to kill the monster, and it's actually her friend. And that was such a oof moment for me.
But it's smart storytelling again. She didn't actually kill her. Sarah killed her.
Right.
Yeah.
So
That's true.
It's like, it's really, really, really complicated. The first time I'm like, God, that was a bitchy move, but then this time I'm like, no, it's not. She is a hero. She's this really cool hero. I love
Such
the complicated
good
hero. That's great writing. Yeah.
Right, yeah, I texted Terry. I was like, you know what? Juno's a mess, but I love her for it. Like, again, like all of us, I was just like, Juno's a bitch. And then I'm watching it. I'm like, you know what? She's trying her fucking best in the way that Juno can try her best. Like, she really does have actually good intentions. Like, she does have good intentions. They're not well-informed intentions, and they're very misguided intentions, but they're good for the most part. And I love a good female character who is a mess and who doesn't apologize for being a mess and is allowed to be a mess. And I just love that about this movie. Again, like, really smart writing about creating these characters who are like empathetic, but also a mess. I love that so much.
And on a metaphorical level, she goes deep down to get forgiveness.
Yeah.
And she is not given it. It's like when you really have hurt somebody you really love and you ask for forgiveness and they twist the guilt harder. And that's what she's left with, is the guilt twisted a little harder. And she took her there to find forgiveness, and she did not get it. So it's really cool. Great metaphor.
Yeah. So we heard when Zelda first saw this, but I'm curious, Lulu and Toby, when did you both see this movie for the first time?
I saw it also years ago. I think I probably was a tween, somewhere around there. What about you, Toby?
Oh, I actually have, it's a fun memory because I took one of my best friends to see it in the movie theater in New York City. And I didn't know that there existed this thing called people who don't do horror. And the movie is over. And my friend goes, Toby, why did you bring me to this? I don't watch horror films. And I didn't even know such a thing existed. I just figured everyone likes horror. There actually is like a breed of human that doesn't do horror? And now that we make horror, I realize there are lots of humans who don't do horror. And I always feel a little bad for them.
Yeah, me too.
And so,
as you should.
That was my memory. I took my friend who doesn't do horror to the descent, and it took a while for her to forgive me.
I was going to say, like, that
movie.
is not a good movie for a person who does not like horror. That's not it.
It's funny, all this memory. I saw this movie for the first time in, I think it was 2005, before it had a American release. I talked about this when we were talking with Rob Savage about Wreck. That was his movie that terrified him as growing up. And at that time, I had discovered that eBay sometimes sells DVDs. I didn't know that I honestly did not know at the time that these are probably like, recorded off of, who knows what. But this is before it was even announced that it was coming here. No, I honestly didn't. I honestly did not. And I was like, oh gosh, I can get this on eBay. I can get a DVD of The Descent. I don't know when it's coming here to the United States. So I ordered it, and it was a region 1, and it came here. It would not work on my DVD player in my living room. So I sat on my computer. I had my headphones on, just sort of like I am sitting right here. And it was night. It was light, dark out. I had all the lights out, and I'm sitting there watching this movie. And my copy was so dark because, again, it wasn't a real copy, I don't think. And it was so dark that even like there's hints you guys mentioned earlier. There's like hints that there's a creature around. I didn't see those. So like the creature where there's the shot of it like sitting there drooling out of its mouth, did not see that. The shot where Sarah is like moving her camera, her like light along the surface, and there's something on the wall, and then when she goes back, it's gone. Did not see that either. So this entire time, I think this is just them in the caves dealing with the cave-in. And then we get to the part where it's the infamous infrared shot. And I'm like, what is going on here? And then all of a sudden it's there. And I literally fell out of my chair. My headphones got pulled out of my computer. I screamed. I had my neighbors next door were my friends, and they were pounding on my apartment wall going, are you okay in there? Because I was terrified because I did not know that there were monsters in it. And that's why I'm like, if I had seen the synopsis on IMDb, I would have known, but I was not prepared. And I was fucking terrified. I was the most terrified I've ever been in a movie.
I've been waiting for this story for years. I'm so happy.
To be a fly
You wouldn't
on
tell
your
me
wall.
until someone talked about it on the podcast. And now I get it. And I'm so happy.
I fucking fell out of my chair. And then I would do it 2 years later with Wreck, because it's the same. I had pretty much a similar experience with Wreck 2 years later. Just sitting on my computer, minding my own business, and then just getting the shit scared out of me. I love when movies can do that, though.
It's great.
I was 12 when I saw it.
Wow.
And it didn't scare me. I loved the shit out of it, which was so funny. I loved it. Like, my dad and I, obsessed with it. I was more scared of the tunnels than I was of the monster. I was like, no, the monster's, like, probably fake. But the tunnels, like, absolutely the fuck not. And, like, the worst was when they're climbing across the gap with the clips. And I was like, I could not, like, when she watching her, like, pull her arm up and do the clip, I was like, I would just be dead immediately. Like, there's no surviving for me. Like, even as a 12-year-old, I was like, there's no way I could ever survive anything like this.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I ever saw, like, a super bleak ending for a movie. It was, like, my first kind of realization about that movies can end not happily. Like, I probably had seen some before like that, but it was just, like, the first time in my head I, like, conceptualized of not all stories are, like, it'll end happily. And I really loved that. And I think that probably kickstarted me down the path now where I love absolutely like fucked up nihilistic movies. So like I'm pretty sure The Descent probably gets some credit there at the beginning. But it was funny because it was like the first time that I realized that my dad and I have very different tastes in movies, because he liked it, but he didn't like the ending. He thought it was too vague. And I was like, I love it. So we started diverging in our tastes. I was going for the more like, oh yeah, the dark and weird. And he wanted more like slasher kind of ending. But
interesting that you brought up the ending, because last night we watched the movie and it ended and I was like, what the fuck is that? That's not what I saw. This is bullshit. This is like a pirated version. And then I quickly got on the internet. I'm like, we just got a bogus copy of this thing because the ending's wrong. And then I read about there's two endings, and one for Americans and one for the director who wanted a particular ending. And it's like, so the first time I saw the director's ending, and I remember it really troubled me because you have that relief. You're like relieved, and then suddenly he snatches it back from you. So it was like, so it's just like a double whammy. Like, that was so cool. But last night they gave you a relief because it was the American version. I was like, I think I'm going to go with the director on that because it was such a heartbreaker.
Well, it's interesting also because when that counterfeit copy that I had was the director's edition from the UK. So it was that full ending. And then when The Descent was announced and it finally was overseas and it was in the movie theater, I took my friends to go see it. I was like, you got to see this movie. This movie is fucking awesome. And I'm watching it. And then we get to the ending. I'm like, what the shit? Right. Because the ending is completely different. I'm like, this is dumb. Why did they do this? And and what happened was he had filmed it, and then when they were releasing it over in the States, I guess it didn't test very well in some like cases where people were complaining because it was too bleak. And so
did you watch the entire movie?
Right?
Seriously, like,
madam, we think it's too bleak. Okay, did you just watch this movie? Shut up.
Well, and I did find an interview with Neil Marshall where he was talking about the endings, and he brought up the differences in the endings and why there was a different ending in the States. And he talks about how, to his mind, and this is a quote, her escaping at the end is even more bleak than her losing her mind and being with her daughter in the original ending. After what's happened to her and what could happen to her, surviving an incident where all her friends are killed, there may be blame laid upon her. She may end up in prison. Psychologically, she's screwed. He says, it reminded me of the end of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. She survives, but she's clearly out of her mind with fear and madness. So I don't see it as being a happy ending at all, having her get out of the cave. And so it was interesting seeing him talk about that, because that was the whole reason that they cut that last, 20 seconds was because they wanted a happy ending.
Right. However, I would rather get out of the cave than stay in the cave. So,
I mean, true.
I'll take the craziness and the guilt.
True.
Go get a chocolate milkshake and feel better.
That's so weird, because when I saw it for the first time, it was the cut. It was the cut with her with the birthday cake.
Right.
The one I saw. That's the original cut. That's the original cut, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay. They released it here as it was the unrated cut. Had the
that's right. That's what I watched. I was thinking about what I got at Blockbuster, because that's where I remember getting this movie from.
And it's funny because I have that unrated cut on DVD somewhere, but I was like, I'm just gonna watch it on streaming last night, and the streaming edition they had was the American cut, and it didn't have that. And I was like, I haven't watched this movie in a minute, and that's what I get, the American ending.
I love the character Holly, too. The Irish girl who's just such kind of a daredevil. She's so young and, impulsive. And then it's kind of brutal what she goes to, but she's such a badass,
Yeah, that moment is like the first moment that it was like this shit is real. And I was like, okay, they're not. I was at that moment, I was like, they're not going to get out of this. When she goes running for daylight and she ends up falling and breaking her leg, it's such a that's a painful scene.
Yeah. I also realized that one of my biggest my biggest fear, I realized, is a compound fracture. After I saw this movie, I was like, I did not know, again, I was young, I was like, I did not know your bones could pierce your skin. You could do that. Absolute
That's not what
worst
they're
nightmare.
supposed to do.
It's just like, wait, this can happen to people?
Yeah, this
movie. No, it's okay. You just push them back in. You just need a good friend to push them back in, get a splint, and you're fine.
Just hobble your way through a cave system full of weird cannibals.
It'll work out.
Fine.
Oh, and you know what's also an awesome scene is when there's like the mother and child humanoids. Oh my god,
that was cool. Yeah.
You know, and it's so cool.
Oh.
The
You know,
mother's
in like the blood pool and everything.
Yeah.
Love the blood pool.
Yeah, that's so
Love
cool.
a
That
good
there's a
blood
mother,
pool.
you know, her like tits are hanging down, and she's like looking for her little baby, her little girl, toddler humanoid who just got off. Like Sarah.
Little toddler humanoid. Oh,
Good.
And then she goes chasing off after Sarah.
Yeah, and it's so fitting, you know, of course, that they had the Sarah who lost her child, you know, be the
Oh.
one. It was like, oh, this is just so cool.
You're so smart. I didn't think of that. That's so great.
I didn't either until just
Neither
now.
did
That's
I. I was like,
amazing.
Wow.
Well, Toby brought the
Holy
visuals
shit.
down.
Boom.
Also, technologically, is that right? It's filmed insanely well because obviously, if you're down in a cake splunking, you're only going to have that little headlight, which doesn't light anything. And
Right.
so it was really intelligently lit because obviously it's studio lit, but it doesn't feel like it. Like a lot of the time
No.
when you watch a Hollywood movie in a cave or something like that, it's all lit up and you're like, oh my God, it looks so corny. But in this
Like the
case,
sequel?
he does. Oh, you know what? I haven't seen the sequel, so you just convinced me not to.
Oh my God, no.
Yeah,
The
so
sequel
it's
is
just lit.
horrible.
So kind of honestly and intelligently, you know, they really try to do their best not to just be like, oh, like, let's just light up the cave and have them crawl through it with their headlamps.
I also think this film is filmed incredibly well because it's got these aspects of first-person POV and found footage, and everyone who listens to this knows I'm found footage obsessed, so, like, any elements of that and horror I love a ton, especially here when, like, the big reveal about the creatures comes from that first-person point of view through the camera, and it's like you, the viewer, and the characters are put in the same subject position and at the same time realize something. And it's just kind of cool to have that realization that way. But then it's also as it is used as an extension, especially for Sarah when she's watching them eat. What I think, is it holly or
It's holly.
Is it holly? Okay,
Yes,
they're eating holly, and you view it through the night vision, and
Right.
it's just an incredible. But you're so close to it, which makes it even. And when it sniffs the camera, like that part, like I know it's not a new thing, but that will always scare me. If you have a creature sniff the camera or get really close to something, like you guaranteed to give me goosebumps, and so it's exactly, and you're like, oh my God, it's going to feel her breath. It's going to eat her. And I just love how those techniques are used in films like this. And it just makes my little found footage heart happy.
I love that you bring that up. I didn't think about that, but you're right. As a vehicle, that's so smart that we're sitting in the same seat as the star looking through her camera. That's really a great point.
Isn't it cool?
There was one thing about what you said, though, about sniffing. Probably the only thing that actually bothered me was when they did their screeching, and they've kind of determined by the youngest one, who's the medical student, that they use sonar and they compare them to bats. And so, bats echo sound off of things. And they scream and they're face to face with these people and nothing. They scream in front of them, but do not catch their sonar. They walk around blindly, but they don't catch that there's an object there that's never been there. And that was the only thing that took me out of it a bit sometimes. And, I already knew that they were monsters and more a figment of imagination. And I was mostly just excited by all the imagery and all the metaphors inside of it. But that was the one part that took me out. I don't know if you guys felt that way.
And how
If there
come
was
we can
any
shoot
clues.
Michael so many times and he doesn't die? Damn it.
I thought
Evil
you were
dies
going to
tonight.
bring up... I thought you were also going to bring up, though, when, like, I think it's the sisters are hiding and her watch goes off, and that part gives me, fucking nightmares, because, like you said, it's even though it's, like, you can't see what's in front of you, but at the same time, it still scared the shit out of me when her watch went off. It still scared me.
I loved it when the like humanoid dude steps on her face.
Yes.
Somebody like sitting on her. That was so
Yes.
cool. Oh yeah.
It's a great
they take
shot.
liberties, but I like them.
You deserve them.
Yeah, you get to I think they work hard enough that they can take them.
Oh, totally. They've earned it. I just always notice those small things, and I feel cool.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I was noticing them too. I was like even sniffing the camera. It's like definitely that's going to have some heavy sniffs on it.
That's going to be a foreign object for sure.
But
so one of you brought up Sam, the youngest member, and that's another character beat that I really loved in this film, because she's sort of like she's there with her sister, the older Rebecca, and Rebecca kind of treats her kind of like a daughter almost. She has like a motherly vibe to her. She's like, now we're going to do this. We're going to do this. And Sam's like, yeah, I get it. But she definitely seems the least sure of herself in this group. Mm-hmm. And the moment that Holly falls and breaks her leg, because Sam is a doctor, she just like snaps into it. She's like, okay, you need to do this. We need to do this. We need to push the bone back in. We need to do this. Yeah. And it's such an interesting moment, because the entire time she is the one that's being like protected and just like being cudgeled through the whole thing. And it's at that moment when everyone else is about ready to start fucking freaking out that she's like, no, get it together, put this bone in, get a splint, let's fix her leg. And it's such a small part that I never noticed before until this watch. And I'm like, oh, that is such a nice character moment, because everyone kind of gets that kind of moment to shine. Mm-hmm. You have Rebecca kind of doing the free climbing over the ravine. Mm-hmm. Juno, of course, is being a badass. Sarah down her like descent path into madness. You have Beth. She's sort of like the suspicious of Juno's relationship, and she's sort of the kind of catalyst for that. And so you have all these moments, and then she gets that one moment right there where she basically, if there were no creatures, she would have saved, Holly's life.
That's a great point.
And I love the scene when she has to go back across the ravine that her sister was on. I mean, she's so heroic. I love that. It's one of the scenes I remembered most from the first time I had watched it was Sam. Same with you, the doctor stuff, because I like that stuff. And then also, going across the ravine, and then how she dies in that kind of arched position is incredibly visual.
Yeah, just hanging there. She kind of sacrificed herself for the rest of the people. And it's such a, such a moment.
Well, and I love this movie because you are upset with every death. Like a lot of times you see people are picked off and you're kind of like good, or you shrug. But in this movie, I feel like every person that died, it hurt. Like it felt like an emotional impact. It's like you really cared about these characters. And again, we didn't spend a ton of time with them, but the time we do spend is very meaningful. Yeah. And it just makes all of their relationships like all the more impactful and all the more sad.
You're so right. I thought about that too. And also how, if you go with the, original ending, how everyone dies is pretty kind of awesome, because you really don't want them to. It's, it's like you said, you really, really, really don't want these badass bitches to die. And and the fact that they kind of do is sort of kind of wonderful. I mean, story wise, because it's so tragic.
Yeah, and then you watch the sequel, and Sarah goes back in the cave because she's amnesic, and Juno is still alive in the cave, and they have another meeting together.
Wait, who's
that
still
rehashes
alive? Juno's alive? Oh,
Juno's still alive in the cave, crawling around with the crawlers.
She's the ring.
Yeah, same actresses.
Wow.
Well, I'm
had nothing to do with Marshall, because Marshall didn't have the rights to this movie. It was part of when he was hired to do it, he didn't get to keep the rights, and they said they're making the movie. They asked him if he wanted to be a part, and he's like, yeah, my advice is not to do it. And so they did it anyway. And he's not very happy with it. And it's not good. Like, John, you're talking about how Hollywood lighting up, that it's brighter than anything else in there. It's just, it's everything that this movie gets right, it does wrong.
Wow.
They went and shot it at the mall.
Pretty much.
Right.
Okay, I love the creatures. I want to talk about the creature design a little bit, though, because in that interview that I found with Marshall, he talks about, he says, I don't know if everyone understood what the creatures were about. He talks about his idea was that if humans had lived in caves, and the majority of humanity at some point left the caves, these are the ones that went into the caves and thousands of years ago, and they evolved to live there instead of in houses like the rest of us. And he also shot them at 18 frames per second with a 45-degree shutter to give them that kind of staccato, creepy movement. And I think it works so wonderfully here, because they don't move like you would think they should move.
Yeah.
They move so fast.
They do.
We talked about the creatures like all day today, because the creature work like artistically is perfect and so detailed. Like whoever did it, we were talking about, well, I wonder how long it took for them to get into their creature looks. Like how did they do the suits? Their eyes were great. They had to wear contact lenses. the translucence of their skin, and then the speckled kind of like almost like they had a speckledness to them. Like how smart is that? It's like so smart, like that kind of detail. And then, as you say, they shoot it in frames per second, like Gladiator. So it's like that action it's moving too fast for you to fully comprehend, but it looks insanely violent. And it really captures the splatter really well. So I was noticing you don't see a lot, like in all the fights, you really don't understand what's going on, but you buy it. It's cut together so fast, like just seconds put together, and it really works well.
And I love how that they're bat-like, how their features really are like their ears and their kind of mouth, and they look like kind of Nosferatu,
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking.
I was thinking too. They look just like weird vampires.
Yeah, I love that.
It apparently took 3.5 hours to get an actor in that makeup, according to IMDb. So who knows if it's true or not?
What is there? So great! I'm glad you know this. So what is it that they put on their body, because it looks like skin? So
It doesn't say. It just says that they were designed to resemble Nosferatu. They had huge white eyes to begin with, but this idea was done away with because they looked too silly. It took 3.5 hours in makeup to transform an actor into a crawler, and they had to shave off their body hair as well.
Wow.
That's really... So they must be naked wearing something that kind of hides their genitals or something.
Yeah.
Wow. What a day on set that would be.
Getting real close.
But I think that the ones that sort of are female identified crawlers, like the mother has hair. And the other
That's right. That's right. She has like the stringy-ish long hair. I always forget about the mother, the woman crawler.
She's great.
Yeah. She has a great jump scare too when Sarah is emerging from the blood goo.
Yeah.
And it got me this last time too, where all of a sudden it's like leaping out behind her and kind of grabs her, and she has to like have this forced fight in the goo with it. It's like such a great scene.
Oh yeah.
I always hate that scene though. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just saying, I can feel it when I watch it, like being in that water. Just like I do a lot of water wrestling with Lulu, and it's not easy. It's slippery and scary. I always lose.
I'm happy you said that last part. Thank you. Yeah, it was really interesting also that was one of the longest battles that you saw with one of the humanoids, and it was the only one with long hair around the same length as hers. I almost was like, maybe this is kind of a symbolism that it's her fighting her kind of demon self. And I think there are something around the same number of demons that you see at some point as her friend. So I thought, maybe she's like fighting her creations, and this is her fighting against what she's created.
I'm sorry, what the fuck? That was incredible.
I wrote a ton of notes while I was watching this, so I was nerding out.
That's fucking incredible.
So that leads me to a question, though, because one of the theories on the internet is that the monsters are all in Sarah's head, and she's the one that's actually killing her friends. And I was curious what y'all thought about that in regards to the movie.
No, I think it's a monster movie, and that's why it's so fun.
I think it's a bunch of baloney.
Yeah. Somebody overthought that one. But that's good that they're overthinking it.
I think it was this moment, too, when I could overhear when Lulu and Zelda were watching it. I think it was after the blood goo thing where she kills the mother crawler that she drops the antler, whatever that she stabbed her with. And I heard Lulu say the same thing I said. I'm like, why didn't you keep that, dumbass?
Truly, that is a pet peeve. You see them drop the instrument, I'm like, I know that's because you want to see them struggle more later, but god fucking damn it, you guys are all smart till now.
Well, and I speaking of, okay, so The Descent, I think, is a smart title, too, because there's, again, multiple layers to it. They're actually descending. It's sort of like they're descending into hell. There's that aspect to it. But it's also Sarah's sort of descent, especially if you keep the British ending, into basically losing her mind. And by the time that she is emerging from that blood pool, she has gone completely feral. She is like running around like the creatures. She's killing. She's like she is kind of snapped. And she almost in some way kind of becomes a villain in a sense to the surviving women because, she, hampers poor Juno And it's sort of like this aspect of her kind of becoming one with the creatures. It's sort of an interesting juxtaposition where she's like starting off as the hero, but by the end of it, she's kind of the villain in a way.
Yeah, you're so right.
This movie is fucking perfect. I'm sorry, but this movie is perfect. It's perfect. That's all I have to say about it.
It's got great complexity and so much symbolism. I didn't realize at first that it was a man who had written it as well. And I thought then, upon discovering that, I thought, okay, maybe he did what I've always dreamt of doing. He wrote a classic script knowing about, the patriarchy and how things are seen and just flipped it. He said, okay, now we cast women for the men and men for the women. And, in the beginning you have this man cheering on all these badass female athletes just going for it and going out there on the river. And there's also these ideas of them as discoverers. There have been other people there before, and now it's these women who are going to be the next discoverers, and, are they going to actually conquer it or not? And all those ideas of them there before and who gets out last, I thought was super, super cool.
Yeah, and there was also another interview with Marshall where he was talking about, because before this he did Dog Soldiers. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's a werewolf movie, and it's pretty much a predominantly male casting. There might be a single female character. And so he kind of was talking about that. And then there was like an article that he saw online about how British people are making really good movies, but they're not making anything really scary. And so he kind of I think had those two ideas of well, my last film was predominantly male. I want to do a movie that is predominantly female. And also I want to scare the crap out of people because it was kind of given to him as sort of like a challenge in this online article he saw. And I just think that's fascinating that you can have him make something that is so testosterone filled with Dog Soldiers. And then he creates such interesting, intriguing, and complex female characters that it seems like incongruous to each other. And I just think that's wonderful.
Yeah, it also feels like he thought about his characters as people and not as gender.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They feel like characters that were written without being concerned and centering their identity on their gender identity, which I think was a really helpful thing for this movie.
Quick question about Dog Soldiers. So I haven't seen it in a little while, but I feel like one of the main characters is a woman who in the end is the big reveal, right?
I think so. It has been so long since I've seen it. In fact,
and I thought that was cool when I watched it. I think that she is the ultimate werewolf. Isn't that what happens?
I think so. Again, I saw the movie before I saw The Descent so long ago.
So, yeah.
Do we want to wrap up and give this our rating out of 5? Did we talk about everything? I know there's a million things we could talk about with this movie forever, but
it really is.
Let's do it.
Oh, I know what I'm going to give it.
All right. Well, first off, Terry, how many pools of blood goo do you give The Descent?
There's no beating around the bush. This is a 5-star perfect movie for me. I love this movie. I love this movie when I saw it on this counterfeit DVD that I had. I loved it when I saw it in the movie theater, minus the ending change. I have loved it probably the dozens of times I've seen it since then. Every time I watch this movie, I pick up something different. I think it's absolutely terrifying. Like I said, I jumped last night and I've seen this movie probably 20 times. I think this movie is perfect. I don't think I would ever change a single thing about it. So unabashedly, 5 blood goo pits out of 5 for me. What about you, Mary Beth?
5 blood goo pits out of 5. This movie is incredible. We've said all the incredible things. It's complex. It's terrifying. It scares me every time I watch it. It's just beautifully shot. Everything about it. It's just like a perfect horror movie. So 5 out of 5. Adam's Family, what rating would you give The Descent? How many pools of blood goo would you give this? Either as a family or individually. Whichever you prefer.
Let's do it on a count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
5!
Yay!
It's unanimous.
It's unanimous.
Do you have any last lingering thoughts you guys want to share on The Descent with your rating?
I just want to say that the attention to every single detail, from storytelling to cinematography to paying attention to the little shots. There's so many little shots that they spend a lot of time to get to the eyeballs of the monsters. The attention to detail is marvelous.
Sure, fucking
I think something that makes you think about it after for a while, and all of us having seen it even more than once, and we still can sit on it, be scared by jump scares, be upset by character deaths, and really ruminate on it and have a lot to think about and interpret, I think that is just a great film.
Yes. Simply put, it's just badass. So, yeah.
Agreed. I love it.
Hell yeah.
Hey, we love you guys too. Thank you. This was a super fun conversation.
So fun.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us to talk about The Descent and finally bringing it to the show. Since we started this was one of the movies that I have been dying to talk about. So I am so glad you guys brought it. So thank you so much. And thank you for coming on. Where can our listeners find you? And what do you have that you can share?
Oh, sure. So our website is wonderwheelproductions.com. And all of our films can be kind of checked out there. And Hellbender's coming out, and we're making a new one, When the Devil Roams.
Hell yeah.
And we're on Spotify Musically and, YouTube and all that kind of stuff. But it's Hellbender with 6s as E's.
And that, guys, listeners, this will be on the show notes, so you guys can look at that just so you know. I'm pointing down as if this is a video. As if this is going up as a video.
So are you guys working on a new movie? Is that what you said? Or
yes,
have you shot it?
We are. We're doing a period piece called When the Devil Roams.
Hell yeah. Period piece.
Oh, a period piece.
Frankenstein.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
That sounds incredible.
Here for that.
Cool. All right, listeners, you've heard from us, but we want to hear from you. What was your experience with The Descent? Send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com or reach out to us directly on Twitter. I'm at MB McAndrews.
And I'm a Gaily Dreadful.
And of course, don't forget to follow the podcast on Twitter at Scarred Podcast.
And please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe.
Thank you to Eric Power for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thanks everyone for listening. Please stay safe out there, but most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room?
It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th.
We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.